All right, welcome to the Tuesday, January 21st special meeting of Planning and Zoning Committee. I'm Chair Andrew Owen. I'm joined by my Vice Chair, Scott Reed, joined by committee member Josie Raymond, joined by committee member Khalil Bitchan, and committee member Jeff Hudson, and Kevin Bratcher, and Betsy Rui. And can we get our statement read for, please?
This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A, read in full.
So, number one on legislation is 011-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 703, 707, 709, 711, 727, 731, and 747 East Jefferson Street, 218 and 220 South Shelby Street, and 223, 225, and 227 South Clay Street, containing approximately 2.45 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone 0004. Motion. Properly properly moved and seconded, and we'll turn it over to Planning and Zoning. Thank you.
Afternoon, Julia Williams with the Office of Planning. And this is Rabbit Hole.
Oh, hang on, we gotta wait.
I'll wait for the presentation to come up.
There we go.
All right. So this project is located in Council District 4. The existing use is industrial with also commercial, and the proposal is also industrial and commercial. The existing zoning, there's a piece in the middle that's already zoned EZ1, and then on the two sides to fill out the block that's zoned EZ1. Or C2 in the traditional neighborhood form district. It's proposed for the whole block to go to EZ1. The request was a change in zoning from C2 to EZ1, and there's a revised district development plan associated with the site. The summary is that Rabbit Hole Distillery would like to expand with event space and retail. There's truck loading and maneuvering to be relocated from Jefferson Street to a covered off-street dock along Clay Street. So this is the applicant's development plan. Currently, there's loading docks along East Jefferson, and so those are proposed to be moved to this area with a covered dock, which is located on that corner. And then some other proposals for the site are retail gift shop, bar, tasting area, some offices, and other retail. So this is the elevation of the site. They are keeping two of the existing structures on the site, one located on Jefferson and the other on Shelby. Some other renderings of the property. The South Clay Street rendering. This is the South Shelby Street rendering. And then also South Clay Street, this is one of the structures to be removed. East Jefferson Street, these are structures to be removed. So the applicant held a neighborhood meeting on March 30th, 2023, as well as December 18th, 2023. The Land Development Transportation Committee meeting was held on May 23rd, 2024, with the Planning Commission public hearing held on both July 11th, 2024 and November 21st, 2024. There was a motion to recommend approval of the change in zoning from C2 to EZ1 by a vote of 7-0. Are there any questions?
So this is in Councilman Herndon's district in District 4. I spoke to him, and he is supportive of the project. I don't have anybody in queue. Anybody have any? Councilwoman Rui.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe this one came up before and it's back in. Are they proposing to preserve more of the structures then?
They're only preserving two of the existing structures. There's one, and if you wanted to bring up the presentation again, there's one on East Jefferson Street, and that's this structure here, existing structure. And then there's one that kind of looks like a castle that's
Yeah.
on Shelby Street, and they're preserving that one here at the corner.
Okay.
That one will be used as retail.
Yeah, those were the two that were of architectural interest, shall we say. Yeah, so they have managed to preserve those. Very good, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I don't have anybody else in the queue.
Andrew.
Oh, Councilman Batchon.
Thank you, Chair. Just out of curiosity, what's the turnaround timeline after this is to begin construction and development on such a great structure in Nulu? And are they looking to do any additional expenditures after this is completed?
I don't believe the applicant or their attorney made a mention of any further expansion after this. I don't believe there was anything further.
Thank you.
Okay, with no further questions, this is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote.
Councilman Brecher? Councilman Brecher? Yes. Councilman Hudson?
Yes.
Chair, you have 7 yes votes.
7 yes votes, it passes and will be sent to the, which calendar? Old business, yeah, to the old business calendar. Next order of business is number 2, 012-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 7203 East Manzik Road, containing approximately 6.77 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone 0079. Motion. Second. Properly motion is moved and seconded. Julia, you'll be doing this one as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. This is 24 Zones 0079. This is located in Council District 23 on 7203 East Manslick Road. The existing zoning is residential, and the proposed use is also residential. The zoning is R4 currently, with a proposed to be PRD, Planned Residential District. There was a request for a change in zoning from R4 Single Family to PRD, Planned Residential District. There was also a major preliminary subdivision and a detailed district development plan. It's one undeveloped parcel currently. The proposal is for a 40-lot subdivision. They will be attached townhome style. There are stub connections carried through the site, and the Highview neighborhood plan applied to the site. So this is the applicant's development plan, which continues Rome Beauty Way through Brayburn Ridge, and then Old Bates Road connecting out to Manslick Road. These are elevations of what the site is anticipated to look like, something similar to what is shown here. This is currently the subject property, which is vacant. Some adjacent property, residential to the east and the cemetery to the west. The applicant held their neighborhood meeting on June 26, 2024. The Land Development and Transportation Committee meeting was held on October 24th, 2024, with the Planning Commission public hearing held on November 21st. There was a motion to recommend approval of the change in zoning from R4 to PRD by a vote of 5-2. Are there any questions?
So this project is in Councilman Hudson's district, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to be a yes vote on this, but I do have a concern about the stub into Manslick Road. Manslick is a very, very narrow rural road, and the shoulders drop off drastically. Was there any consideration or study given in the preparation of the plan on the traffic that would be dumping out onto Manslick Road?
So the Manslick Road entrance is the primary entrance into the site. Let me,
Yeah, it didn't necessitate a traffic study. Yeah, I'll go ahead. Brian Davis, Office of Planning. So with this only being 40 units, it didn't necessitate a traffic study. And so there wasn't any kind of an additional thing that was required of this. And so, we just looked at the project and looked at what requirements would be required along the frontage of Manslick there. And so the applicant does show some improvements there. But then, you have the two different connections that go back into the site. And so those were, all that was considered adequate for the proposal.
So did I just hear you say there are some planned improvements on the main entrance? Because maybe I missed that in the presentation. I don't see it on that plan right there.
So again, it's kind of unique because you don't have a whole lot of frontage on Manslick Road, and so they are showing the sidewalk being proposed along Manslick. The pavement width is. It's not shown on here, but they are proposing additional right of way along Manslick, and so we would take a look at that. I know there was a lot of concern about the alignment with Old Bates and making sure that came into that the entrance there lined up as much as possible as the existing location of Old Bates on the opposite side of Manslick Road, and so that was taken into consideration when we were looking at the location of that particular entrance.
I just want my concern on the record, so thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Councilman Bratcher.
Probably my neighbor would know here. Was this development, was it the first go around, was it gas station?
No, you're thinking of a parcel at the corner of Manslick and
Okay.
Church Road.
Thank you.
Different project.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? I don't have anyone in the queue. Without further questions, it's an ordinance calling for a roll call vote.
Vote is closing. Chair, you have 7 yes votes.
With 7 yes votes, it passes and will be moved to old business. Next order of business, number 3, 013-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 6703 and 6705 Rocky Lane and 6707 Beulah Church Road, containing approximately 1.24 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone 0081. Can I get properly moved and seconded? Julia?
all right. This is 24 Zone 0081 Beulah Crossing. This is located in Council District 23 along Rocky Lane and Beulah Church Road. The existing use is residential and the proposed use is commercial. The existing zoning is R4 in the Neighborhood Form District, and the proposal's for C1. The request was a change in zoning from R4 to C1 commercial with a district development plan. The applicant is proposing a restaurant with a drive-through. The adjacent parcels were rezoned recently for higher residential use and commercial use under 23 Zone 0030. The primary access will be via Rocky Lane, which provides connection to both Beulah Church and Damascus Roads. And then there's some areas of wetlands, and those are proposed to be preserved with some tree preservation areas. So this is the applicant's development plan. Those tree preservation areas are located along Damascus Road and to the rear of the site, access along Rocky Lane, and then there's also cross-access provided as well. These are the elevations that the applicant provided. Photos of the subject property. It's the treed area over here. And then this is along Rocky Lane. The adjacent sites, this is looking north on Beulah Church Road and the non-residential north of the subject site. So this is the subject site here. So the applicant held their neighborhood meeting on June 27th, 2024. The land development and transportation meeting was held on October 24th, 2024. The Planning Commission public hearing was held on November 21st. With a motion to recommend approval of the change in zoning from R4 to C1 by a vote of 7-0. Are there any questions?
I want to recognize that we've been joined by Councilwoman Parrish Wright. This project is in Council District 23, Jeff Hudson's district. I'll turn it over to him for comment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this project is part and parcel of a much larger product known as Beulah Crossings. The reason it's separate is because this particular parcel of land didn't line up with the timing with the rest of the big project, so it's just a timing issue. Fully support this, and I would appreciate the support of the rest of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't have anybody in the queue.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a comment.
Yes, Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Thank you. I want to honor the leadership of Councilman Hudson. I do want to say that my office received 2 emails and opposed to this. Was there anything that really resonated with community that we should know about? Or is there any, have you heard from anyone in opposition from the community? I just want to honor that those folks reached out and asked us to not support this.
Yeah, I'll respond
Councilman
to that.
Hudson.
Yeah, I don't know of any project that there's not always some opposition to. But this particular project, being right on the northwest corner of the much larger project, most of the pushback I have seen is tree preservation. This project meets the conformance of the tree preservation. Other than that, I'm not aware of any.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Rui?
Thank you. I noticed the thing about the wetlands on there, but then I see a wetlands determination letter that says there is no significant wetlands. Can you show me a little closer or something what they were talking about in there that you're preserving?
While staff's taking a look, I think I can briefly address sort of this generally. Travis Feaster, Assistant County Attorney. So that letter that's in the record indicates that there aren't any jurisdictional wetlands on site. Sometimes they're sort of locally referred to wetlands that don't technically meet the actual definition for preservation purposes. It looks to me like that's probably what went on here, because I'm not seeing anything on the plan that indicates preserved wetlands, but they have a larger version over there, so I could be missing something.
So the logic had indicated that there was potential for wetlands on the site, but there's none mapped. But the potential would be within those tree preservation areas.
Okay, it was my understanding.
But they're not
I
mapped.
thought I heard you say something about there was an area that they were going to be preserving. Was I confused on that?
It did say that there was potential wetlands, but those areas were located in the tree preservation area, but those are not, they weren't jurisdictional, so they weren't mapped, but logic showed, like, this is potential for the potential area for a wetland, but there wasn't actually one there.
Okay, so basically it's just low-lying land, and we know it's going to get soggy.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And there were some areas on the main plan. There were a couple of different wetland areas that were identified and are either going to be mitigated or preserved on that plan, but yeah, nothing on this site, nothing significant.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a correction.
Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that Councilman Hudson knew that the emails I got was for the one in Councilman Batchan's district. So I apologize. I have my legislative aide just let me know that those were the ones. So I just want to say I have not received any opposition for your project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? With no further questions, this is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote.
Councilmember Parrish Wright,
Yes.
voting is closing. Chair, 8 yes votes.
With 8 yes votes, this passes and will be forwarded to old business. The next piece of business is number 4-0-014-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 11800 and 11806 East Orel Road, containing approximately 1.64 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24 zone 0100. Okay. Second? Thank you. Properly moved and seconded. Julia?
Yes, this is 24 zone 0100 for a McDonald's. This is located in Council District 14 along East Orel Road. The existing use is residential, proposed for commercial. The existing zoning is R4, proposed for C1, both in the Neighborhood Form District. There was a request for a change in zoning from R4 to C1 commercial with a district development plan with binding elements. The case involves 2 undeveloped parcels with a proposal for a McDonald's restaurant with a drive-through. This is the applicant's development plan showing access off of Dixie Highway as well as Flower Vale Lane. These are the elevations that were provided. This is the subject property. This is along Dixie Highway, and then Flower Vale and East Orel right here. Adjacent properties, this is across Flower Vale, and then non-residential across Dixie Highway. Residential across East Orel, and then there's also residential to the south along East Orel, which are the adjacent parcels. The applicant held their neighborhood meeting on July 24th, 2024. The Land Development and Transportation Committee meeting was held on October 24th, 2024. And the Planning Commission held its public hearing on November 21st, 2024, with a motion to recommend approval of the change in zoning from R4 to C1 by a vote of 7-0. Are there any questions?
Thank you. This project is in Council District 14, which is Councilwoman Bast. Councilman Batchon, have you spoken to Councilwoman Bast?
Yes, I've spoke to Councilwoman Bass a few minutes ago, and she has a few concerns in regards to some of the traffic studies and whatnot. So I think what we need to do, obviously, as I am pro-development, we need to see structures and development happening south of Dixie Highway. I'm going to, in favor with her, motion to table this so she can do some digging on this and see what we can do in regards to making sure the traffic pattern and increased traffic that's going to happen there on Flowerville Road is mitigated, considering there's 300 and something apartments going in right there as well. And it's already a heavily trafficked area with the two-lane road there. So I'm going to defer and make the motion to table on this one so she can get some digging done on that and understand the process a little bit better.
Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Properly seconded. We need to vote on the tabling. We can do a voice vote on the table. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So the ayes have it. So this will be tabled.
Chair,
Yeah.
can I ask what the timeline is on this particular one so we can expedite the process and make sure that we're move this forward next meeting one way or the other?
So, yeah, so action is required by February 21st, so we have some time. So this will come up at our next committee meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Next item of business is number 5, O-015-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 6101 to 6107 South Side Drive, 101 to 111 Steedley Drive, and 6312 Kinjoy Drive, containing approximately 11.78 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone 0101.
Motion.
Properly moved and seconded. Julia?
This is 24 Zone 0101, fabricated metals expansion. This is located in Council District 25 with addresses along Southside Drive, Steedley Drive, and Kenjoy Drive. It's located in the Suburban Workplace Forum District. The existing use, or the existing, well, there's not really an existing use on this right now, but commercial zoning is existing. It's proposed for industrial. The existing zoning is C2 in the Suburban Workplace Forum District with a proposal for M3. The request was a change in zoning from C2 commercial to M3 industrial and a district development plan. So there's 8 contiguous parcels. None of the structures are proposed to be preserved. The proposals for a manufacturing structure. There was a previous case on the site, 21 Zone 0161, which rezoned the site from R4 to C2 for contractor shops and retail. This is the applicant's development plan. Highlighted is the portion that is proposed to be rezoned from commercial to industrial. These are the elevations provided by the applicant. This is the subject property currently. And then the adjacent property, we have the former Naval Ordnance property, and then there's residential across Southside Drive. There's residential across Steedley Drive, and then industrial along Kenjoy. The applicant held their neighborhood meeting on July 24th, 2024, with the Land Development and Transportation Committee meeting on October 24th, 2024. The Planning Commission held its public hearing on November 21st, 2024. There was a motion to recommend approval of the change in zoning from C2 to M3 by a vote of 6-1. Are there any questions?
Thank you. We'll start with, this is in Council District 25, so we'll start with Councilman Batchon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things I want to touch on here. My first question, Julia, is what was the no vote? Can you tell me what the, I was looking for it in the minutes, I couldn't find it. What exactly was the no vote?
The no vote was from the chair who thought that C2 was more appropriate for the site.
Okay. In regards to the process, I'm going to touch on a couple different things here, if that's okay. But in regards to the process, going back and looking at some of the videos and listening to some of the concerns of the 2 oppositions on record, we had no Spanish speaker moderator there to interpret some of those individuals that live in that community who are of different languages and descents. And don't speak that well of English. So we need to make sure, I think, on the process side, to cover that, making sure that we are hearing the voices of those who do not speak English, right? I've talked to Travis in regards to some possible binding elements. I think we're going to talk about a little bit here today. But let's get the facts right here, guys. This area has been an industrial area since 1941 when the Naval Ordnance site was opened up. Surrounding this Naval Ordnance site are industrial buildings. This particular development is being developed by a company that's been in existence since 1971. They employ 250 people on the 18 acres that they're currently there, right across the street from Kenjoy. They employ, of those 250, 22 different languages from 18 different countries that come from that community. 45% of their employment base come within 5 miles of that factory. 28% of them live within the 40214 zip code. My biggest point here I think I want to make is we have two on the record in opposition at the planning hearing. And we value and appreciate their inputs and their community advocacy. But my issue is, in the 11th hour, we get 45 emails in opposition to this when we have the neighborhood meetings for a reason. I want to hear every voice, and I want to hear every opposition with facts. But it's hard for me to say no to this when the existence of this company is providing a service and a positive net income development for this community. And I'll leave it at that right now. And if there's any other opposition, I'm happy to answer some questions or touch on those points. But Travis, I think we talked about a little bit in regards to maybe adding some binding elements in regards to hazardous materials being used on the site, and addressing those issues. As I looked at the LDC for M3, I would also like to point out maybe adding no adult entertainment, no storage of coal and gas. And I guess you and I can kind of go through that language between now and the next council meeting. But ladies and gentlemen, I look for your support in regards to this is a positive outcome for the community. This is putting 40-plus people additional to work from that community that is in poverty, that are high-paying jobs. I think we need to look at this in that manner.
Thank you, Councilman Batchon. Councilwoman Ruhi.
Thank you very much. Thank you for noting all the diversity in the community and the diversity there at the employer. I'm really happy to see that. The little backstory, when that area was zoned to C2 commercial, I actually spoke at that zoning hearing, and the main argument that we had at that point was we didn't want additional truck traffic coming through that community, because despite anything that anybody does, the trucks are going to come the way the trucks are going to come, and it's basically on Google Maps. And Google Maps is saying to come down 2nd Street, down Southside Drive, and that's through residential areas, and then it's going to go on to Steedley and Kenjoy, which once again is residential areas. So it's going to have a significant impact on the people who live there in that community. Our roads were never built to withstand the heavy truck traffic that comes through there day after day. The neighbors' homes were not built for that. In addition, this development, the way it's proposed, is huge. And it's going to be right across the street from my constituents, who are largely Spanish-speaking. It's going to be next door to a Vietnamese convent. And these folks, no, they didn't show up at the community meeting because I'm sure they saw a sign posted there and go, I don't even know what that says or what it means. So my constituents are asking that it be tabled. My constituents are asking to be killed. I realize, given the significant development that is in this, I do ask that it be tabled and that we able to talk to the developer and see what else we can do to mitigate the impact on the community. Because these folks with the heavy industry near them, it affects the quality of life in that neighborhood. And anything we can do to improve the quality of life for those neighbors, I think we need to focus on that. So I am asking right now that we table this. I've spoken to Travis, and Travis says we have enough time to hear it again at our next meeting and to address it again and give us some time to talk to developers on that. So I move that we table this and come back to it at our next meeting.
So we've got a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Second.
So the motion to table has been moved and seconded. We will do a voice vote. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Can we, I think we need to do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Parrish Wright,
Yes, to table it.
Chair, you've got 5 no votes and 3 yes votes.
The motion to table has failed. So do we have additional questions or comments? I will just, for a second, what do we do in general? It does sound like we need to do a better job of determining who our audience is. And if that audience is, speaks a different language, it would be helpful to know that going into some of these, neighborhood meetings, so we can make sure that there are things that aren't lost in translation. How do we do that now to try to ensure that we're reaching everyone from a cultural and language standpoint?
Yeah, Brian Davis, Office of Planning. So when we're made aware of this, we do try to reach out as much as possible. We've had some cases recently where, for example, we know that there was a large Hispanic population, and so in that case, we sent notices out in Spanish, and then we made sure that we had interpreters present at our hearing. So when we know, we do make efforts to work with either the council representatives or with AMOS to help identify those populations and how best we can communicate what's going on, what the requests are, and things like that. Now, in this particular situation, it's kind of unique because we were at the hearing, and the person who wanted to speak was actually in WebEx, and so they weren't present physically on the site. And so they had reached out to, I think you were running the meeting, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Right. So I was hosting the meeting, and so I was able to communicate with them through Google Translate, and not the best, obviously, but we were able to communicate with each other. So I was able to cut and paste and put in Google Translate to identify what their concerns were, and they were an adjacent property owner, directly adjacent. But because of swearing in and and not being, not just putting all our faith in Google Translate to make sure that, there was some it's not going to be perfect. And we wanted to make sure that whatever they were saying got translated properly, not necessarily through Google Translate. And so the chair said that we cannot accept their, this communication through WebEx. And in general, WebEx communication is not part of the record, but we attempted to see if there could be something that we could do to accommodate this person. But the chair, in speaking with the county attorney at the time, did not entertain that because of the inefficiency of Google Translate.
So there's 2 points here. One, I guess, who normally flags you guys to this, to this need? And how do we make that flagging of who the population is more consistent, right? Who normally flags you?
I mean, a lot of times we'll hear from, especially if it's an applicant who is requesting some sort of translation services at the hearing, then they'll reach out to us, and then we'll go through Catholic Services, which is who the city works with, to make sure that we have a translator on hand then. If it's an adjoining property owner, that can be a little more difficult because sometimes we don't have as much notice. But if that's the case, then we will make an effort to have someone there present. We this particular circumstance has brought on a lot of conversations within our office and how we deal with a situation like this. And so we're currently kind of researching that, trying to find out what options we may have on the fly, because again, this was someone in WebEx we didn't know in advance. It was after work hours because the meeting had gone late, and so I mean, there were a lot of different circumstances here at play that kind of prevented us from being able to allow this person to provide some sort of testimony that would have been that would have been sufficient for the record. And so we're exploring different options. I don't have any answers right now, but that is something that we have started to look into ever since, especially this case.
Okay, thanks. I think it's important that we kind of explore options, both on how we identify who our audience is, and obviously the audience is broad, but in this case, kind of narrowly who the audience is and what languages they speak.
Right. And we would reach out to the council representatives because they know as well as anyone about the makeup of their communities, the council district, and the people that they represent. And so that would really help us out a lot, because a lot of times we're not as familiar when we have a development going in a particular area, if there is a particular group that may be nearby that we need to kind of take that extra step to provide notification and let them know that we're interested in hearing your response, your feedback on this as well, and how can we best go about that.
Thank you. And then I had a question. The fabricated metals expansion. What kind of work do they do exactly? Do we know that?
It's on the PowerPoint. They build cabinets. So like LG&E cabinets, like for the power supply boxes, AT&T cabinets that run the
So
line.
is it welding and
Some welding and some just fabricated metal cabinets, essentially.
Yeah, okay.
I know it was on the PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. So I wanted to just weigh in on this because a lot of people have reached out specifically to my office because they're equating having industrial next to residential to the Givaudan explosion that happened in my district at the end of last year. And I certainly understand, why they would make that connection. I think specifically the kind of work that's done here compared to the work that was done at Givaudan is very, very different. Givaudan cooks with high pressure cookers that have the potential to, frankly, explode. And metal fabrication is not nearly that intensive a use. So as it relates to this use, I would, and it's an expansion, and it's basically a piece of the enormous industrial complex around naval ordnance, all that, I would be, inclined to, it sounds like a great thing, but I just wanted to bring that to people's attention because people have reached out to me specifically as it relates to Givaudan, and to me it just feels a little bit different. So I just wanted to say that for the record. Councilman Batchon, do you still have?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for your feedback there, and I think that's one of the biggest concerns that we're facing with some of the opposition. And I can relate to that. I can appreciate the concerns, but let's not miss the point here, right? We're creating 40 plus new jobs in this particular location. They're looking at another location as well in Jefferson County to build another part of their expansion project. This is a $20 million investment into the community. That's huge for a community that is so diverse and full of refugees and just so many different areas of poverty, that this can create some generational wealth in that community because they're hiring from in that community that are going to buy those homes. They're going to invest in that area. As bad as we would like to see residential and a residential neighborhood there and so on and so forth, let's not fall short of that's at the Naval Ordnance Site, and the environmental concerns with that land from over the years. And this company is mitigating those risks and doing all of the proper things to address the issues as far as environmentals go. Couple questions I want to ask to Julia, I think is probably the right ones. But when did this, just for my own peace of mind, when did this go from R4 to C2?
I believe it was around 2021. The case number is 21, so it would have been either 2021 or 2022.
Okay. Second part is, in regards to the process, Councilman Owen alluded to this somewhat, but how can we do better as a city, as a planning commission, as a planning staff, in regards to maybe allowing the WebEx to be on record with some type of metrics, or what do we need to do to make that happen? I really appreciate Brian Davis's comment in regards to reaching out to the council members beforehand to see what the demographics of the neighborhood is, and I think we should move on that now, right? But to the point, how do we make sure that these folks are being heard on the record with the proper translation?
I think that might be a good question for the county attorney. So we've been working with them, like on the fly at the meeting, and to see what we can do. We know that Google Translate does work, but it's not exact. So I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, Travis.
Sure. I think part of the problem here too is setting aside the translation issue for a moment. Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Adjustment, Landmarks Commission. Any board that I'm aware of in Metro that currently allows a video participatory option for the public doesn't consider chat to be a beneficial part of the record. And there are some good reasons for that. I mean, someone could type a whole novel into chat, and then what do? Sit there and read it out so every commissioner and the audience can hear and react to it. There could be all sorts of expletives, et cetera. So the chat has not historically been considered part of the record. There's also the swearing in, right? I can send a chat without ever having to raise my right hand and take an oath to swear the truth, et cetera. So that is a threshold issue here. And allowing chat to be part of the record, if it's in another language, seems strange. People can just translate their own comments that they don't want to get sworn in for, and to whatever language they want, and then we have to reverse translate them and read it in. So there's a burden there. I do think staff does a good job of doing their best to find translators when they do have notice. There are some individuals of staff who are multilingual who have occasionally stepped in on short notice, but those folks cannot be expected to be at every meeting. You don't know who's speaking what language exactly is going to show up at any given meeting. So short of having some sort of Metro translation office that has extensive staff of multilingual individuals that are available at a moment's notice, we are going to fall short here in some cases, unfortunately. So it is a piece about notice, about us trying to get early contact, like Julia and Brian alluded to. Sometimes developers do let us know that there's a large population of a given language, so that we do have that heads up. Sometimes staff is just generally aware, but you may have someone who speaks Russian who happens to own a single lot right next to a property, and unless they reach out ahead of time, we can't go door to door and say, hey, do any of you need any sort of translation services day of? So there are some issues here, but as you just saw recently in the case with the trailer park, when we do have notice, we can take affirmative steps to adopt to the situations.
Thank you, Travis. And with that being said, though, generally, let's say the chat is not on the record, but if they were videoed in, and is that a part of the record?
Certainly. So the individuals who video in and take the oath and speak, et cetera, are. Like I said, chat just has some additional issues with it.
Okay. Where do you feel that do you feel that we can be optimistic in regards to adding those binding elements between now and the next council meeting?
Sure. I mean, we'll have to reach out to the developer and see what they're willing to agree to. Hazardous materials is not necessarily a defined term here, so we're going to have to go through what we might want to bind out. As far as the list of uses, we can work with your offices and see. Some applicants are really willing to bind out uses and say, nope, this is my plan. I don't really care about the other ones. Some are very hesitant because they're worried about the future value of the property. So I'll speak with them and see.
Absolutely.
I think there is enough time to have those discussions. As to whether or not they'll accept them, I can't speculate.
And do we need to go ahead and add the binding element that Councilwoman Flood used to add on every development? Is this one of those ones where we need to consider any planned development changes would need to come back to the council?
Standard binding
Yeah,
element.
please.
Up to you. We can add that at this point, or we can wait to council and add it all at the same time. Your call.
I'd probably like to just go ahead and get it out of the way so we don't forget about it.
Okay.
And Travis, can I ask before you, would that standard binding element prevent, one of the questions that I've received is M3 is an awfully intense industrial use. And if this left, then something very, very intense could go there. Would this standard binding element that we're getting ready to read into the record, would it prevent that from happening without it coming back to us?
The answer is maybe, unfortunately. I mean, the standard binding element covers a number of situations, right? It's largely changes to physical structures, increase in size, et cetera. So if someone was proposing to expand on site, then that would certainly catch it. Increases in density, probably not relevant, but if there were to happen to be some residential component added. Changes to the binding elements, that could be relevant, especially if we have some uses bound out and some future user wanted to pursue one of those, that would kick it to council. As far as a change in use that directly or indirectly requires a public hearing, that one's a little bit trickier. If someone can come in and just use this warehouse as is and they don't need a waiver or a variance or a CUP or anything, that probably wouldn't be captured. So it's going to be really dependent on the applicant.
So there would be some uses that would still require a waiver or a CUP or some kind of
Theoretically, there could be some, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. This would become binding element number 11, and it would read as follows. Any significant increases to the proposed structures, e.g. increases in building height, number of units, number of buildings, any increase in density on the property, any changes in use on the property which directly or indirectly require a public hearing before the Planning Commission or subcommittee thereof, and/or any amendments to the binding elements other than I, the addition of new binding elements, 2I, changes to binding elements that merely update the public hearing date, or 3I, updating a previous version of this binding element to reflect the current language, shall be reviewed before the Planning Commission with final action to be determined by Metro Council.
So that's an amendment requiring a voice vote? Can I get a motion in a second?
Motion.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay. The ayes have it. I have Councilwoman Raymond in the queue.
Yes, thank you. This has been a really interesting and informative conversation at my first meeting. I wanted to ask, I understand that this site, and I know it's already in production, but I understand that this site is either across the street from or very nearby a child care center as well as a ballpark, and wanted to ask, and you started to talk about the environmental impact. What does the company do, or what will the city do to ensure that air quality, soil quality are not made worse by future uses of this site?
Chair, may I?
Yes, Councilman Batchon.
Let's be clear here, guys. Thank you for your comments, Councilwoman Raymond. The ballpark is on the naval ordnance site, okay? That is physically on that property, right in front of the naval ordnance, Navy base, right in front of BAE, on the same property of Raytheon. It's all on the site. So if we're concerned about that environmental impact, the baseball field is literally on that site. This one is in adjacent to it, within a couple 100 yards. So I'm more concerned, if we were going to talk concerns about environmental, of the ball field being on that 99-year lease with the city on that site versus this environmental concern. So my environmental concerns, obviously, they're slim, but you've got more problems on the site itself than you do with this site, if that answers your question.
It helps, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that things can be not great,
Yeah.
and they can get worse.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Rui?
Thank you. Thank you for this extended discussion about language access. So the city does have a language access line. Are you all aware of that?
Yes, we're aware. It's just in a moment's notice, and it also just depends on the time. Like Brian had attested, this was a longer meeting after 5. So, I don't know that we would necessarily be able to get hold of someone after 5, because it's not during regular business hours. But we are aware and use and have been starting to use Metro's language access people. It's just at a moment's notice. it's, we're just scrambling to try to figure out how do we accommodate this person, and we need to do better.
So have you had any direct instruction on how to use the line then?
I know that we could call, but, that's something that we'll have to look into a little bit more to see, what are their parameters and what can we do to make it work better with them? Can they jump on WebEx really quickly and be able to translate right away? That's something that we're looking into and that we need to do better.
Okay, I would, really appreciate it, because that was definitely an issue there with somebody not being given the opportunity to speak because of the barrier. So I hope you reach out to the Office of Immigrant Affairs and get full instruction on how to do that, because it should be available.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilman Bratcher.
Take it that we're talking about the neighborhood meeting, right? When we're talking about the translator, why wouldn't that be on the burden of the presenter?
That was at the Planning Commission meeting. I'm not sure if there was anybody that had language access issues at the neighborhood meeting, but this was during the Planning Commission meeting.
Oh, okay.
Do we have any other questions here regarding this one?
Yes. I had my hand up.
Oh, yep. Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Thank you. I know it's hard when you're online. I tried to raise my hand. Also, Councilman Leninger has his up. But I want to thank Councilman Bashan. I know our unspoken and spoken rules are to, if something is in someone's district, you usually honor it. The issues that came up, I appreciate you acknowledging the language barrier, and I appreciate you adding the binding element. The reason why I supported what Councilwoman Rui said is because of there were some things that was missed, and I definitely love anything that gives us more livable wage jobs and things like that. So just because I'm going to vote present because of the I don't know enough from the folks around what happened, and I feel like this has went in different directions that to me shows why it should have been tabled to answer more of these questions. But I want to respect all the work that's happened before this. So I just want to thank you for at least adding the binding elements and then also acknowledging that there was some missed opportunities to get all of the input from the people who, support it and don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Leninger, do you still have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say that there was a question earlier about when this was originally rezoned from residential. It happened, there was a planning and zoning meeting on October 18th of 2022. Prior to that, the original request for the property had been for this to be to CM, that they'd originally asked for CM, and they had been amenable to changing that back to C2 before it was passed through the Metro Council due to resident concerns. So that was back, 2.5 years ago. It had been raised before and then amended to C2 based on resident concerns. I just wanted that in the record.
Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, Chair. So I actually was an employee of Naval Ordnance for 12 years and have maybe a little inside baseball, no pun intended there, of the workings of that facility. It is probably 80% metal fabrication, which is what this is. If there's an environmental concern, it's probably far outweighed by Building E there at Naval Ordnance, where they do metal plating and coating. A lot of chemicals involved in that. I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that this proposal doesn't involve that kind of work. But I say that to say that expertise of containing environmental concerns is already there at that site. I find it a little ironic that at the neighborhood meeting and at this meeting, we have focused much of our attention on the concerns of the neighborhood, but the two complaints that Councilwoman Parrish Wright referred to earlier that I'm sure at least everyone on this committee received, if not everyone on council received, came from people not in that community. And those two people, I know them personally. One of them was in my wedding. Has a reputation of going out and stirring up letters from people not in the community to generate this kind of prolonged discussion. I think the onus is on this body, if we're going to talk about the impact to the community, to focus on the community, not on the noise from outside the community. But doesn't require a response from staff. Just, I find that ironic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rudy.
Just very briefly, both those constituents live within about a mile of there. And they pass through
Not
there
the two
frequently.
that wrote the letters. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to respond.
Don't have anybody else in the queue. Anybody else have any questions or comments before we go to vote? Okay, so with no further questions, roll call vote.
Councilmember Paris Wright.
Sorry, take that off mute. Present, please.
So with 6 yes, 1 no, and 1 present, this passes and will be forwarded to old business. The next item on the agenda is number 6, O-016-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 120 North 42nd Street containing approximately .12 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24-zone-0109. Properly moved and seconded. Julia?
This is 24 Zone 0109, the 120 North 42nd Street rezoning. This is located in Council District 5. The existing use is residential with a proposed use of residential in the traditional neighborhood form district. The existing zoning is R5 and the proposed zoning was R7. The change in zoning was requested from R5 to R7, single family to multifamily, with a detailed district development plan. The proposal is one parcel developed currently with a single family structure. The structure was to be preserved and reused. The proposal was for 3 residential units. This is the applicant's development plan. This is the subject property here. Adjacent properties, residential to the south across North 42nd Street and residential along all of North 42nd Street. And then residential to the north. The applicant held their neighborhood meeting on August 26, 2024. The Land Development Transportation Committee meeting was held on October 24th, 2024. The Planning Commission held its public hearing on November 21st, 2024, with a motion to recommend denial of the change in zoning from R4 to R7, which was passed by a vote of 7-0. Are there any questions?
This project is located in Council District 5. So Councilwoman Purvis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the Planning Commission's unanimous vote to deny this change. This, I've heard from quite a few neighbors, stakeholders in the immediate area. They are not in favor of this zoning change for various reasons. One has been the street is very narrow. And I'm surprised that looking at the pictures that were presented, I'm surprised not to see all the cars that are normally out there. I think the applicant had stated that parking would be in the back. I've driven in the back, and the back of that property is very narrow. I don't see how you can get one car back there. I think that was part of their reasoning why they felt like this was something that would work. So I have a vote on this. I am not supporting this. I will be voting no on this, as the stakeholders and the neighbors have reached out to me, and they're very concerned about the problems that could come as a result of this zoning change to a multi-level residential house, or going from residential to multi-residential housing. So I will be voting no on this.
Right, so what Councilman Reed was saying, it would be yes to uphold the planning commission's denial.
you.
So it's a double negative in a way. or-
No, we don't want it. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Reed.
Do we have any other questions?
I was in the queue to point the vote yes for the denial, correct, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions or concerns? Without further questions and concerns, we'll open it up for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Parrish Wright,
Present, please.
Councilmember Purvis,
Yes.
voting is closing. Chair, you have 8 yes votes and 1 present.
So the ordinance passed and will be forwarded to old business. Next item of business is number 7, O-024-25, an ordinance amending the Louisville Metro Land Development Code regarding zoning enforcement, case number 24-LDC-0011.
Motion.
Properly moved and seconded. Julia, are you speaking to this one?
Yes.
Okay.
This is 24 Zone 0085, Porkland Barbecue. This is located in Council District 5. The existing use is institutional, proposed for commercial. The existing zoning is R6 in the traditional neighborhood form district. The proposal's for C1. The request was for a change in zoning from R6 multifamily to C1 commercial with a district development plan. The project involves one parcel developed with currently institutional structures. One structure is currently in use as a restaurant, and then the proposal is for that restaurant to be a full-time restaurant use. This is the applicant's development plan. These are photos of the subject property. You can see it's an currently an institutional use. There's residential across Slevin Street and residential in a park across North 25th Street. Residential across St. Cecilia Street and St. Cecilia's senior apartments to the northwest of the site.
I'm sorry. I read the wrong 7. 7, I was reading an old agenda that I had, and so I read what was number 7 on the preliminary agenda instead of the current number 7. So I think I need to reread that. So number 7 is 0-025-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 338 North 25th Street containing approximately 1.44 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone E0085. Read in full.
I'm glad somebody was paying attention because I clearly was like, I'm going with this.
You had it right and I had it wrong.
Okay, so the applicant held their neighborhood meeting on September 12th, 2023. The land development transportation meeting was held on November 14th, 2024. with the Planning Commission holding its public hearing on December 5th, 2024, there was a motion to recommend approval for the change in zoning from R4 to R6, passing by a vote of 9-0. Are there any questions?
Travis, or do we have, is this a different one than one that we talked about before, the Heather Amendment?
That's case number 8 on Taylor.
Okay, because I'm still working off of, all right. Anybody have any questions, or Councilwoman Batchon?
Maybe this is an oversight, but if I've seen correctly, that it was going from R6 to commercial, and then we're saying R5 to R6? Can we go back? Yeah, so, yeah, going from R6 to C1, and then on your last slide there, no, the very end. We're going from R4 to R6.
Oh, that was the last presentation I did. It's correct from R6 to C1. Whatever I wrote in the initial, yeah, R6 to C1. This is correct.
Okay.
This request.
So and I would assume Councilwoman Purvis is going to add some things or whatnot, but would there be any binding elements in regards to maybe liquor stores or anything of that nature to preserve the integrity of that neighborhood and pushing to make sure that this is a thriving restaurant and allowing that it grows and does well for that community? And what is the density number that you're allowed to have in residential on a C1?
So it wasn't discussed to, any kind of use binding element wasn't discussed at the time when this went through. And then C1, this is a good quiz. I think it's 34.8 dwelling units per acre.
This project is in Council District 5. Councilwoman Purvis, do you have anything to add? Mm-hmm.
Julia, you said, sorry, Mr. Chair, may I?
Yep.
Sorry. There's a current restaurant on the space now that only operates on Fridays, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and is that, what's the reason why they only operate on Fridays? Because they're in a residential zoning district, or is there a CUP or something?
Right. They don't have the zoning right now to operate every day. And so that's why they were asking for that zoning, so that they can operate daily.
Understood. Thank you.
Councilwoman Purvis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this zoning request. Love City is the applicant. I have worked with them in the past. They are great community partners. They've gotten a lot of support from the stakeholders in Portland. They do a good job. There are other things that they do in the Portland community as well, as far as education and training. So I support this. They are Faith Foundation, and they've been at Edit Plus in the Portland community, so I definitely support this being granted to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Councilwoman Rui?
Thank you. I just want a clarification. So they're rezoning the entire Love City site, correct?
They're rezoning the whole lot, yes.
Okay, so what building is being used as the restaurant then?
It's my understanding it's this existing brick building here.
Okay, and the rest of it is part of Love City then?
It's still institutionally used, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else, questions, concerns? I don't have anybody else in the queue. Without any further questions or concerns, we'll open the roll call vote.
Councilmember Parrish Wright,
Yes.
Councilmember Betshon. Yes. Councilmember Purvis,
Yes.
voting's closing. Chair, you have 9 yes votes.
With 9 yes votes, this ordinance passes and will be forwarded to old business. Next order of business is item number 8, O-026-25, an ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 4217 Taylor Boulevard containing approximately .334 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone 0117. Can I get a motion? Properly moved and seconded. Julia?
It was my understanding that this one was going to be held.
Okay, so Travis, is this the one?
Yes, I can speak to this. Long story short is there are a number of parcels on the site that are being proposed for rezoning. And there was an issue at the Planning Commission hearing where the staff report and the notice and the action the Planning Commission took only dealt with some of the parcels, not all of them. So there was just sort of a continuous error that occurred over the course of a couple weeks. No one really caught it until after the decision was made. And so a part 2 was conducted for the remaining parcels for the Planning Commission last week. That'll be coming in front of this committee next cycle. And from a ease of administration standpoint, I think the best option is to keep this thing tabled. We'll bring forward a large-scale amendment that includes the additional information from the second Planning Commission hearing, all those findings, all the comments, et cetera. And then we'll have one ordinance that deals entirely with this site and the proposal as a whole at that point.
So Sonia, from an administrative standpoint, do we need to do anything here, or? Okay, so can I get?
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded to table. We'll have a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against? No. Ayes have it. So this has been tabled to the next committee meeting. Okay. Next order of business is number 9, O-288-24, an ordinance amending Chapter 156 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances relating to the reduction of fines and costs for owner-occupied properties.
Motion.
Properly moved and seconded. Julia?
So this is not something that was initiated by the Office of Planning.
So, Councilman Batchon, is this something you can speak to as one of the sponsors?
What item are we on? 9?
Reduction of fines.
Oh, Tammy,
Item 9.
can we, Councilwoman Purvis and myself are working on this. Can we motion to table this one as well, please?
So, actually, since you haven't spoken on this one, you can just withdraw the motion. Because last time he spoke, and now that no one's taken a motion, are you just taking a motion, you can just withdraw the motion?
I withdraw the motion. Withdraw that motion. Thank you.
Motion withdrawn. Next order of business is number 10, O-023-25, an ordinance amending section 11.4.7 of the Louisville Metro Land Development Code regarding neighborhood meeting requirements for revised development plans, case number 24-LDC-009. Properly moved and seconded. Joel, are you speaking to this one?
Yes, I am. Yes, good afternoon, Joel Dock with the Office of Planning. This is 24 LDC 0009 for revised plans procedures. So this is a Land Development Code text amendment to amend the LDC related to neighborhood medium requirements for revised development plans. This amendment was initiated by Metro Council Resolution 23, Series 2004, which directed Planning Commission staff to consider incorporating a neighborhood meeting for revised plans submitted within 3 years of a change in zoning being approved. A neighborhood meeting is not currently required for revised detailed district development plans. A neighborhood meeting at this point is only required for conditional use permits and for zoning changes. So the recommendation of the Planning Commission was to require neighborhood meetings for revised plans meeting certain thresholds that are submitted within 3 years of a zoning change. The meeting is to be held prior to submitting the development plan application. The requirements for the neighborhood meeting very much follow the procedures for a change in zoning with respect to notification to adjoining property owners, first and second tier current residents, as well as the Metro Council representatives, and then sending out notice via Gov delivery. There was some specific language that was drafted for this amendment as it pertains to neighborhood meetings. So what revisions of revised plans will require a planning commission or will require a neighborhood meeting? So any revision submitted within 3 years of the zoning change being acted upon by Metro Council, so by final action, anything within 3 years, if it involves an increase in the density of the project by 10%, an increase in the square footage of the project by 25%, an increase in height that also requires a variance or essentially a public meeting, a change in the use of the property, say something like professional office to assisted living restaurant residence or restaurant to car wash, not like one restaurant to another restaurant, just changing names, but an actual change of use that's going to kick in some different occupancy requirements in all likelihood. And then any significant deviation in building or site design that is not the result of utility or environmental constraints as determined by the director. So there were some situations that were pointed out that may not be captured by this, but were a pretty significant change as we saw it, where ultimately the planning director can make that final call. And we know that there are environmental constraints on properties, and we know that they are not all worked out by the time you get to a planning commission meeting. So if that's the result of your change, that is not going to require a neighborhood meeting. This amendment was considered and discussed at the Planning Committee on August 27th, and then again on the August 28th Planning Committee meeting. There were revisions to the draft that were made in between the August 27th and October 28th Planning Committee meeting. And then ultimately, the Planning Commission held their public hearing on December 5th, and the motion recommended approval to Metro Council passed by a vote of 6-4. That is all I have. Thank you.
So Joel, this comes over to us with a split vote, basically.
Yeah, the vote was 6-4.
Okay. Councilman Batchon.
I was trying to listen as closely as possible, but Joel, can you help me understand now, with an LDC change on this, I'm trying to get my words right here, but let's say there's a planned development that has to do with a residential neighborhood. Wouldn't that go in conflict to the moratorium that the state has?
This, with respect to HB 388?
Yeah.
No. This doesn't change the allowable density, change the occupancy. It changes the process by which a revised development plan can be considered and ultimately come to application. So no, it doesn't change density or occupancy. This is specific to the process of submitting a revised detailed district development plan.
Can you touch on the 4 no votes? I mean, it's some slim margins there. So I mean, it's like Councilman Owens has said, we're split votes here almost.
Yeah, I mean, as you all know, when you vote no at Planning Commission, you do not need to state a reason why. Those no votes, I can only speculate as to what those may have been based on the prior comments from Planning Committee and those specific planning commissioners. A couple themes came up: additional burden on applicants, time to get to the finish line, cost, you're adding another meeting, and then the absolute necessity to actually have the meeting and the purpose of the meeting itself, which is why the amendment comes along with about a paragraph of language that you have to include on your neighborhood meeting letter that specifically announces the purpose of the neighborhood meeting. When we looked back at the data and the numbers on revised plans coming in, only about 10% of our revised plans that came in over the last 3 years were related to rezonings that occurred within the last 3 years. And of those cases, an even smaller percentage would be caught up in these changes. So I'd say probably somewhere around 5 to 7% of all revised plans that come in would meet these categories.
Thank you.
Councilman Bratcher.
Can you tell me now, right now, if, say, you have a public meeting for a restaurant and then they change it to a car wash, is that possible without a zoning change now?
So if the zoning, say, is car wash is C1, so a car wash is C1. If the site is already zoned C1 and they want to go from a car wash to a restaurant, that's permitted. If the site was, however, rezoned.
You mean permitted under this bill, this ordinance?
Okay. I'll take a step back then. Yeah. So if in this proposal they say received a rezoning in 2023, and that rezoning was for the zoning district was for C1, and the proposed use was a car wash, to then come back and do a restaurant, they would be required to hold a neighborhood meeting. That would be
Another neighborhood meeting?
They would be required to hold
A neighborhood meeting because of the zone change to a restaurant?
because of the use change to a restaurant. So the zoning change requires a neighborhood meeting prior to the zoning application being formally filed. This is an additional neighborhood meeting for those revised plans. So you're revising the development that was shown on the rezoning. So in your case, the rezoning in 2023, they had a neighborhood meeting. They went to the Planning Commission. They got final action by Metro Council. It's now 2 years from that date. If this passes and they wanted to revise that plan to be a restaurant, they would then need to go back and hold a neighborhood meeting before they then file the revised detailed district development plan. And then that plan would in all likelihood have to go to a public meeting before the Planning Commission or its designee. And if that plan contained the standard binding element language, it may contain 2 additional processes, one at the neighborhood meeting, and then one would be a Planning Commission recommendation to Metro Council.
Thank you.
Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, Chair. So out of the gate, I'm going to be a yes vote today, but if it ends up going to consent, I'm going to later ask that it be taken off and put on old business, because I think we need to have some further discussions on this. I think the conversations that we're having right now are indicative of why it was a split vote. I can see both sides of this. I need to understand it more. Yeah, I'll be.
So you would prefer to forward it out of committee and have that conversation at full Metro Council rather than potentially tabling it here and having additional conversation at committee?
Either way. At the end of the day, we need to have more conversation on it. Maybe it's more tidy to table it and have further conversation here before it goes to council. So move to table.
Do I have a second?
I can second that.
So we've got a motion to table the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Chair.
The ordinance has been tabled. So we have, let's see. Do we want to go back to 9? Okay, we're going to go back to number 9. 0-288-24, an ordinance amending Chapter 156 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances relating to the reduction of fines and costs for owner-occupied properties. Properly moved and seconded. Councilwoman Purvis, did you want to speak to this, or did you want to have planning? I mean, it wasn't their initiation, right?
Joe Haberman, Office of Planning. It was Codes and Regs that spoke to this the last time. Our office is not involved in this ordinance. It relates to property maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Purvis.
Thank you. Yes, this legislation was something Councilman Bashan and I worked on, and with concerns of owner occupants that have been subjected to unaffordable amounts of liens, fines put on their properties. These are people that very much want to stay in their homes, and so this is an incentive for them to be able to stay in their homes. Our focus is on the elderly, anybody that is homestead eligible, 65 and older, that they would be able to apply for a lien amnesty. I think we were capping it at 40% of the total amount owed. And I know that there had been some concerns earlier about the impact, and I'll let Councilman Bashan speak on the potential financial impact. But my concerns is these homeowners want to stay in their homes. They're losing their homes because of these liens. And I feel like that if we can waive these fines and liens for investors to buy up these properties, I think the next best thing is to be considerate of these elderly people that are having a hard time making ends meet, not kick them out of their homes, give them a lien reduction, an amnesty, lien amnesty, so that they can pay for these liens and set up a affordable payment plan. They can do this, I think we have in the legislation, once every 5 years, but it is for owner occupants only. And I will now yield the floor to my colleague, Councilman Bashan.
Councilman Batchon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilwoman Purvis. So just so we can cover some of the bases here and some of the facts. In Section D, we're talking about if the lien exceeds not to exceed $15,000, but we are going to waive 40% of that and set up a payment plan for these seniors that have been in these homes and residents for a proceeding of 15 years. So it's not an elderly just moved into a house that's been there for 5 years that's 65 and over can get this opportunity. They've had to have been there for at least 15 years and have had these liens that have accrued. So we're looking to address that issue. The question I don't remember, Travis, maybe you can answer this. With this, do we give them the opportunity to also repair the issues that they have the liens on? There's something that I thought about a minute ago, and I want to make sure we address that. Like, give them the opportunity to get that repaired, make this grant to waive that for them with the payment plan on the additional 60%, so that they have the opportunity to pay and stay in their homes and not be forced to leave. To kind of a caveat to that, as I know that the state is working on, looking at potential waiving the property tax on elderlies that own their homes for X amount of metrics, whatever that is. But, I think we're kind of in line with what the state's doing in sort of a perspective there. When OMB and Codes and Regs were here last time we talked about this, we asked for a financial impact statement, and we've never received that. So I look to move this today, and I look for your support in making sure that we take care of our elderly, we take care of our 65 and over that are falling in this terrible economy that we've suffered, and give them an opportunity to get out of that.
Do we have any idea how many instances we're talking about, how many people we're talking about? I didn't see, do we have a concrete idea about that?
I would defer to Councilwoman Purvis. I don't have that number offhand, so I apologize for not having those numbers there.
So I can speak on my numbers in District 5. We have $5 million worth of liens on properties. How much of that is singly occupied, I can't speak on. But that's a big number. So we see seniors, we've seen seniors lose their homes because of liens.
So I was I just had a question kind of as a follow-up to what Councilman Basham was saying. If we provide payment programs and forgiveness for liens, there's still the issue of fixing the issue that created the lien in the first place. And so if we're not addressing the
Deficiencies?
core root of the issue,
Right.
then
So I've worked with Mr. Price, the Director of Codes and Regs. He's very much in support of this legislation. And it's something that we will work on down the road as to what programs can we tie these constituents into, such as New Directions, Habitat, how that we can help them repair these properties to take them out of the status of being, to take them out of the violation status so that they can get these properties up to code. So we will be working with Mr. Price, but again, he is very supportive of this legislation.
Councilwoman Hawkins?
Thank you, Chair. I've talked to Richard, and definitely I'm in support of this program. I would really like to see the data. I think that's a huge number just in District 5. So I just would like to know what it is, like everywhere, right? But the last I talked to Mr. Price, he was saying that he was trying to design a program that that had employees that fixed the problem, so the problem still just wouldn't be lingering around. I think that there already is a program, and I don't know, maybe someone can help me out, that does repair properties. We give like New Directions and different entities money, but just to be honest, people like New Directions, they can barely fix their own stuff. I'm still getting concerns just about their stuff not being fixed. So, I mean, if we can find somebody that really jumps on top of, just kind of really jumping on top of these seniors, and not even just seniors, but the disabled, because you don't have to be a senior to be disabled. It could be somebody that has a disability, that owns a property and just cannot, find someone to fix their gutters. I thought Mr. Price was in the process of designing something that would reflect to that, to help that as well. So I'm definitely, in support. I don't know if we go ahead and pass this at a committee and then work with Mr. Price, or what that would look like. But that number just in that one district is horrible. So I just definitely want to look into trying to see if we can get that data soon.
Can I respond to Councilwoman Hawkins?
Councilwoman Purvis.
Can I respond to Council? Yeah. Councilwoman Hawkins, District 5, that is the highest number throughout the 26 districts. So District 5 has the most liens on properties throughout the 26 districts.
That's concerning.
You took the words right out of my mouth earlier with the comment about, do we fix the root cause? So thank you for that, and I'll withdraw.
So a couple of things here. For me, it seems like the intent behind this legislation is good, and I think this is something we definitely ought to look into. My concern at this point is we don't have a financial impact statement, so we have no idea what this is going to end up costing us. We have some ideas, or Department Head Price has some ideas that he's working on. Seems to me, it also comes to my attention, I don't know that we ever made a formal request for a financial impact statement. So what I would like to do is make a formal request to OMB for an impact statement, and that we make it clear to Director Price that we need some more specifics on what the program is going to look like, some of the things we've talked about. I just am afraid to send something that feels a little bit half-baked at this point onto, full council without having full details. Councilwoman Purvis.
And I wanted to say, OMB was very aggressive in coming here the last time we heard this without any data and claiming to have this program already in effect, and it is not the same at all. And then, making the statement, this is going to have an impact on the general budget. It will not, especially when you're talking about a program that has been rolled out to eliminate liens and whatever on a lot of the properties, particularly in District 5, for investors to take and fix and put back on the market. If this is something, if they're not challenging how this is going to impact the city financially to alleviate these liens for investors, why are we getting a pushback on these to eliminate these fees for seniors that are living in their homes? We didn't do a study at all, and so I'm concerned about that. We can do this for investors to come and grab up 5, 10, 15 properties at a time, and we're just going to get rid of the fees. But when we talk about seniors to stay in their homes, all of a sudden we have to do all these studies. All of a sudden we have to know this, we have to know that.
Councilman Batchon.
Look, I agree with Councilwoman Purvis, but to show a compromise here, I would sunlight the date to, if we're going to, we requested, I sat right here and I requested those financial impact statements and I got nothing. It's crickets. So if we formally make those requests for a financial impact statement and the studies from Director Price, I would like to make sure that we move this and have the conversation by next committee meeting to make sure we move this forward.
I think we have to file official paperwork to make that a formal request to OMB. Is that true, Sonia?
Yes, so there's actually, so once you make that motion and such, it'll table it, but you also, there is paperwork which I've actually forwarded to Travis to help if you all wanted to do that.
Please.
And it's a little bit of a process, and I can tell you now that we have another financial impact statement going about another item. It sounds like it's going to take some good time. It's not going to be ready in 2 weeks.
And my argument's going to be
You
the
can
same.
request that, though.
Whether they bring a statement over here or not, my argument's going to be the same. You are waiving these fees for investors to buy these abandoned vacant properties, but you will not consider waiving, or not even waiving, discounting the amounts owed by seniors, disabled people, not even waiving, whereas you're totally waiving all the fees on these vacant properties for investors to take and fix up, which is good. Thank you. It's going to add value to the neighborhoods. But we're fighting over giving a 40% discount for seniors to stay in their houses. It's not a good look.
Councilman Hudson.
Yeah, with all due respect to my colleague, I'm not fighting this. I would like to see some more information on it. And to answer my colleague's question about why do we do it for investors without any of this stuff, those studies were done for the move that the mayor proposed to. Did you? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought she was motioning at me. In my conversations with the mayor before this came to be with the investors, there was financial impact statements done, but it didn't come to us for vote, so we didn't get them. But in the conversation that the chair just proposed, I'll hold. I'll ask the chair, were you asking for a move to table so we could have some additional time for the work to be done?
I was saying that I personally would like more information before we forward this out of committee.
Okay, then I'll move to table then so we can propose that.
And we are officially requesting the financial impact statement from
Yes.
OMB.
So let's take a motion on the financial impact statement, and that will automatically take a motion and a vote.
So we're gonna so motion.
Move to request a financial impact statement.
Second.
Second. So that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So we have, what else do we need to do, Sonia? Or that's everything? So it's automatically tabled to the next committee meeting. Do you want to do the paperwork for it? Thank you. So we have a little bit of time here to try to maybe get to the last number 11. Is that what's in front of us now?
Chair, may I ask a clarifying question on that?
You may.
So does that come before us at the next committee meeting or when we receive a financial impact statement?
Sonia was saying that the financial impact statement that OMB is working on right now, it's going to take some time, so it may not come to us before the next committee meeting. I mean, in a perfect world, they'd have it done and we'd have it,
Is there any mechanism to ensure that it's not
Yes.
held indefinitely?
So we'll have, when Travis helps write it, we can request a time, and since there is some information, right, it might be able to tally, because they're going to reach out to the department, which is probably Richard's Price Department, and if he has that information available, it could be back within days. So it's just the other one, it's just, there's a lot more into it. We can request a time period.
Okay, so the request would be that we have it back before the next committee meeting, if at all possible. Okay. Next order of business, number 11, O-024-25, an ordinance amending the Louisville Metro Development Code regarding zoning. Oh, no, that was it.
No, that's it.
That's it. My agenda is all screwy. Does anybody else have anything that we need to discuss before we adjourn this?
Well, no, I meant that was the case. We still got
We've
to
got-
go.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, you've got an item number 11.
You guys are watching me go through the growing pains of becoming the chair of planning and zoning, right in front of you, so I appreciate your patience. So number 11, I still need to read here, if I can get it to show up. Number 11, O-024-25, an ordinance amending the Louisville Metro Land Development Code regarding zoning enforcement, case number 24-LDC-0011. Motion. Properly moved and seconded. Mr. Haberman?
Right. Good afternoon, Joe Haberman, Office of Planning. So this Land Development Code amendment was initiated by the Planning Commission, but I will note, when we get into it, this kind of arose well before the Planning Commission passed a resolution asking us to make these changes. We've had conversations internally about process improvements and with a number of council offices about how to improve the zoning enforcement process, not the greater enforcement process. This is very directed at zoning violations. I'll just highlight that because that's important. This won't apply to property maintenance or building code type violations. Those are regulated by Chapter 156, and they have a different statutory structure, which is kind of how we arrived at some of these recommendations. But what we've really determined through working with the attorney's office and looking at some of our peer cities is a new way of enforcement that can be an option. It doesn't have to be the option. It can be in addition to the way we do things now, and that is to process zoning enforcement complaints civilly rather than criminally, and I'll get into that in a second, and I'll try to get through this as quick as possible in the interest of time. And then there's another opportunity to kind of codify some of the other policies that we've had related to the fine schedule and related to how we enter properties where we don't have permission or need to get permission to enter those properties. So just a quick highlight of the existing process, and this will largely be the same. It's more how you issue those citations and under what regulatory authority, but we get a complaint. We're complaint-driven with zoning enforcement. We inspect the property after getting that complaint and determine if there's a violation or not. If we see a violation, state law and our code require a written notice with no fine. That's the notice of violation. So the officer will give that. Then they'll typically give time to correct or to file an appeal, which is generally 30 days, but they have some discretion as to when they want to come back. If they come back and the violation is still there, they issue a citation. Under state law, that citation has to carry a fine between $10 and $500. That is where some discretion comes into play. So keep in mind when we recommend how to codify that fine schedule, that's where it's coming from. That's a lot of discretion to give an officer and for consistency purposes. And then if it's not remedied and it's not appealed, right now we refer to district court. That's why our current process is criminal in nature, because it ultimately gets adjudicated there in district court. So right now, we're finding that the process can be improved by giving the option of doing a civil citation. We'll keep the other option in place for several reasons. One, we might want to use it in certain circumstances, but also that will give us some time to make some other improvements. We may have to bring another ordinance to council to amend Metro Code, depending on whether or not we want to utilize the existing code enforcement board and the existing lien structure that we apply to property maintenance. But in looking at some of the other cities, namely Fayette County and Lexington and Bowling Green and Warren County, they have both already done this. So it's been done in other places, and they both left it as an option so that they can do enforcement under the process that we use or this other process. And what it effectively does is it handles enforcement a little bit more like a property maintenance case, where you can take some cases to a code enforcement board, which is an administrative board put together and under the control of Metro Council rather than district court. And the reason for that is our process of using district court has not always been effective from the view of Metro and from the view of neighbors who are concerned about zoning violations. It takes a long time. The outcomes are somewhat out of our control. It's just not a good tool for getting compliance. So having another option could be helpful in getting compliance in a quicker manner. So with that, there's also some issues where the court can dismiss penalties that have been assigned, and that's kind of out of our control too. But if we move to civil, we can take certain things to that code enforcement board. Some things would still need to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment because they hear very zoning-related interpretations have to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, but other things could go to the Code Enforcement Board. And then after the process, Metro could have the ability to place liens on unpaid fines, which is something we can't do under the current ordinance. So that would give another way to ensure collection of fines that have been issued, which in turn should encourage more people to come in compliance, knowing that eventually that we have a mechanism to collect what fines are assessed. So with that, our proposed changes are relatively simple in the grand scheme of what other things we have proposed. So the first is that we would create a new option of being able to process these citations civilly. And again, the only big difference, mechanically it would work the same. It would just ultimately, if they were to appeal, it would follow a different process and likely go to that code enforcement board. We would also like to codify the fine schedule. Right now, the officer has discretion of $500 to $500, and we have a number of officers out enforcing, and if we want consistency, the best way to do it is to codify it, and some other cities have done it. State law only requires it to be within that range. So the way that we're proposing it is what follows the standing policy is $100 for the first citation, $200 for the second, $300 for the third, $400 for the fourth, and $500 for every additional citation after that. That's consistent with what property maintenance does. On a case-by-case basis, the Code Enforcement Board can waive fines or conditionally discharge them, so there is a mechanism if the fine isn't right in a given case to get relief to that, but that would ensure consistency in terms of how the officers apply it, and for a lesser degree, it would allow for better automation in our enforcement system. Then finally, when an officer enters the site, we've been working on a policy that they can't just enter a site without permission if there's certain barriers to entry that they have to get a warrant to enter the site. And that is already our interpretation of the law, but we wanted to put it into our code so that it's very clear to the officers that they can't just enter all premises, that they need certain permissions. So with that, this went through the Planning Commission, and they recommended unanimously to approve the changes as provided. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We're kind of running up against it on time, but Councilman Hudson?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I am behind this 1,000%. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for bringing it to us. I have one question. Last year, the state legislature passed law prohibiting retail tobacco stores, commonly known as vape shops, from selling product that is not FDA approved. Does that enforcement fall under codes and regs, or does it fall under some other department?
We may assist because that's in a state law and it's not in our local law. It's outlined in the statute. I looked that up knowing that this question may come, and it says any peace officer may cite under that. So that would include ABC officers if they're involved, or local police, given where the location is. I think they would cite it, but if there were changes, I suppose that our code enforcement or health department that enforce our tobacco license might be empowered to cite under that if they're defined as a peace officer, that particular person issuing the citation.
Thank you for that answer. I'll be getting back with you.
Councilman Batchon, quickly.
I would like to, if there was an opportunity to be a co-sponsor, I'd be a co-sponsor on this, and I would like to hurry up and pass this so they can get to work, because there's many cases that we need to be able to get in and cite the zoning situations, especially in District 25 and some surrounding districts. So thank you, Joe, for all your work and your efforts, and your team for putting this together. It's tremendously appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll say quickly too, this gives us more flexibility, more options, and will get us better, in my opinion, will get us better results too. So I'm extremely supportive of this as well. I don't have anybody else in the queue. Anybody else have anything quickly before we go ahead and vote?
I had quickly, I'll be really quick.
Yes,
Mr.
Councilwoman Parrish-Wright.
Yes, I think this is a good initiative as it lines up with what the other parts are doing. My concern is that a lot of times these are happening with entities that live outside of our state and jurisdiction that own some of these properties. Do you feel like this will still be effective for them in getting those perpetrators, I mean, not perpetrators, but those folks who are not honoring the communities and neighborhoods the right way?
I think it will be more effective because ultimately when you end up before district court, you have to serve them to appear before district court, and serving people that live outside the county is very difficult and challenging. Now, if they live outside, we'd be able to continue fining them and put liens on the property and ensure that the penalties are at least paid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Without further questions, we'll open this for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Parrish-Wright?
Yes.
Chair, you have 8 yes votes.
With 8 yes votes, this ordinance passes, and this will go to consent calendar. Anybody have any? Yeah, consent calendar. If we need to change it, we can. With no further business in front of us, again, thanks everyone for being patient with me, and we will adjourn.